Everybody thinks people who never clean their house are lazy. Psychology says that's often the exact opposite. Some of the people who struggle most with clutter are also some of the hardest working, responsible, and thoughtful people you'll ever meet, which raises an uncomfortable question. If a messy house isn't always a sign of laziness, what is it actually a sign of? Because a messy room is rarely just a messy room. Sometimes it's a collection of postponed decisions. Sometimes it's what overwhelm looks like when it becomes visible. Sometimes it's the silent footprint of stress, exhaustion, or a life carrying more weight than anyone else can see. And sometimes what looks like a lack of discipline from the outside is actually a person doing everything they can just to keep their head above water. Tonight, we're going to look at what a messy house might really be saying about the mind behind it. Let's get into it. Number 1, the mess isn't the problem. There is a version of you that exists only in your head. In that version, you come home and within 20 minutes, everything is back in its place. And then there is the version of you that actually exists, walking past the same pile for the 5th day in a row, stepping over the same shoes, glancing at the same cluttered counter and feeling something heavy settle in your chest before you even look away. Most people assume that gap is about laziness, about discipline, about simply not trying hard enough. But that explanation falls apart the moment you look closely at who actually struggles with this. Some of the most capable people you know cannot keep their homes together. Hard workers, sharp minds, people who show up for everyone else. And somehow the one space that belongs entirely to them is the one space falling apart. If this was really about laziness, it would not be this selective. There is something quieter happening here, something almost nobody talks about. Your home does not perform for you the way you perform at work, in conversations, in photos. It cannot fake composure. It simply reflects whatever bandwidth you actually have left. A messy house is often what overwhelm looks like when it becomes visible. It is not a character flaw sitting in that room. It is a mind that ran out of space before the room did. Number 2, the hidden cost of too many decisions. Picture a single object on your kitchen counter, a receipt, a package that arrived 3 days ago, a jacket that does not belong on the chair but somehow lives there now. That object is not just an object, it is a decision waiting to happen. Keep it or throw it away. Put it back or find it a new spot. Deal with it now or push it one more day. One decision is nothing. Most people handle that without even noticing. But a messy room is rarely one decision. It is hundreds of them, stacked on top of each other, each one small enough to ignore and large enough to add up. Clutter is often a collection of decisions that never got made. Here is the part nobody explains. Decisions are not free. Every choice, no matter how small, pulls from the same limited resource in your brain. The more decisions you have already made in a day, the less you have left for the next one. By the time most people get home, they have already made hundreds of invisible decisions. What to say, how to respond, which version of themselves to show up as for 8 straight hours. So when they walk in and see a counter full of small, unmade decisions, their brain does not see a 5-minute task. It sees one more demand on a tank that is already empty. It was never really about the object on the counter. It was about everything that object was quietly asking them to decide. Number 3, when small tasks start feeling huge, one dirty dish in a sink does not bother anyone. You pick it up, you wash it. 10 seconds later, it is gone and forgotten. Now picture that same sink with 50 dishes in it. Something strange happens in the brain at that point. It stops seeing 50 small 2-minute tasks. It starts seeing one enormous, undefined mountain. And once your brain reframes it that way, the actual size stops mattering. What matters is how it now feels. The bigger the mess becomes, the less your brain sees individual tasks, and the more it sees failure. One shirt on a chair is just a shirt. 5 piles of clothes is no longer about clothes. It quietly becomes a symbol, proof, or what feels like proof, that you cannot keep up, that you are behind, that if you start, you will not even know where to begin. So the mind does something that feels protective in the moment. It avoids the entire area, not because the person does not care, but because looking at it has started to feel like looking directly at evidence of their own failure. And once a space starts to represent failure instead of simply needing attention, something shifts. The task stops being physical. It becomes emotional. That is exactly why a checklist never fixes this. You cannot motivate someone out of an emotional reaction with a to-do list. Number 4, emotional exhaustion, burnout, and depression. What makes this difficult is that many people experiencing it don't even realize what is actually happening. They think they're lazy. They think they've become undisciplined. They think something is wrong with them. But sometimes the real problem is much harder to see. There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, a kind that follows you into the next day. And the day after that, you can still go to work, still answer messages, still show up when people need you. But when you're finally alone with your own responsibilities, there's simply nothing left in the tank. And that's where something strange starts to happen. The things that once felt automatic stop feeling automatic. Making the bed, folding the laundry, washing a few dishes. Not because they're difficult, but because even the smallest task begins to feel heavier than it should. Burnout often arrives this way, quietly, not as a dramatic collapse, but as a slow withdrawal from the things you used to keep up with effortlessly. One missed task becomes two become 10. And before long, the room around you starts reflecting a struggle that nobody else can see. Then there is depression. And this is where many people get it wrong. Depression doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it looks like a room that slowly stopped being taken care of, a pile that keeps growing, a corner that never gets touched, a home that slowly becomes a record of how little energy someone has left. Not because they don't care, but because caring itself has become difficult to reach. And perhaps the hardest part is that the mess often becomes evidence against you. You look around and think, how did I let it get this bad? But what you're really looking at isn't proof of failure. It's proof that you've been carrying more than you realized. This won't explain every messy home, but for some people, it explains more than anything else ever has. Number 5, the psychology of avoidance. Here is something almost nobody admits out loud. Avoiding the mess feels good, at least at first. You walk past the pile, you close the door to the room. You tell yourself you will deal with it tomorrow, and in that exact moment, a small wave of relief washes over you. The discomfort is gone, not solved, just postponed. Your brain registers that relief is a reward, and anything your brain experiences as rewarding, it wants to repeat. Avoidance solves today's discomfort by creating tomorrow's problem. This is the trap almost nobody sees coming. Every time you avoid the mess, you get an immediate payoff. But the mess does not disappear. It waits. It grows. And the version of the task waiting for you tomorrow is always slightly bigger than the one you avoided today. Over time, a strange pattern forms. The relief from avoiding becomes more familiar than the relief from actually finishing. And the longer this repeats, the more distant the idea of starting begins to feel. This is not a character flaw. This is a brain doing exactly what brains are built to do. Reduce discomfort right now, even when that trade quietly costs more later. Understanding this does not fix it instantly, but it removes the shame from it. Because once you see avoidance as a brain doing what it was wired to do, it stops being proof something is wrong with you. Number 6, the hidden trait many messy people share. By now, it would be easy to assume that every messy home is the result of overwhelm, burnout, or emotional struggle. But there is one final possibility that rarely gets mentioned. Some people live in clutter not because they lack attention, but because their attention is being consumed somewhere else. Think about the people who become completely absorbed in what they're doing. The entrepreneur working late into the night, the parent trying to hold a family together, the artist lost inside a project, the student carrying the pressure of a future they haven't built yet. These people aren't necessarily ignoring their environment. In many cases, they barely see it. Their mind is occupied by something it considers more important. And that reveals something interesting about human psychology. Your attention always follows what your brain believes matters most. Everything else becomes background noise. Sometimes that background noise is a pile of laundry. Sometimes it's a cluttered desk. Sometimes it's an entire room that slowly drifted out of focus. This doesn't mean every messy person is secretly a genius. But it does mean that mess is often a poor way to judge someone's character. Because what looks like neglect from the outside may actually be misplaced priority from the inside. Sometimes a messy room isn't proof that someone doesn't care. It's proof they're spending their energy caring about something else. And that is what makes this topic so easy to misunderstand. Most people look at the room. Psychology asks us to look at the person, because the room only tells you what was left undone. It tells you nothing about everything they were carrying while it happened. The next time you walk into a messy house, be careful about the story you tell yourself. Because what looks like laziness from the outside may actually be overwhelm, burnout, sadness, avoidance, or a mind carrying more than anyone around them realizes. If any part of this felt like it was describing you, you are not alone, and you are not broken. Let us know in the comments which part hit the closest to home. And if this changed the way you think about something most people never stop to question, subscribe. Because this channel exists for exactly that. The things people experience but nobody explains. A messy house doesn't always reveal a person's character. Sometimes it reveals their struggle.